Alright, so today what we're doing is we're taking a look at the causes of World War II and trying to figure out why the war started. You may have already taken a look at the Holocaust video, which kind of goes into this traditional animosity between the Germans against the Jews, or actually really all necessarily most European Christians and the Jews at the time. But we're going to be focusing more on the geopolitical stuff. What's happening, why Hitler is expanding, what's he getting at, what is Japan doing, although we may leave Japan for another day as far as getting into the Pacific. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So one of the first reasons why World War II is going to happen is World War I. And not really the fighting, but the peace treaty. The peace treaty is really going to be what is going to start this war happening. So it's not this fighting, it's going to be the Treaty of Versailles. The reparations and the territory stripped from Germany is going to leave a humiliated Germany, a Germany that is in economic despair, that their military's been cut down, and they're going to be looking for somebody to help them out, somebody to restore Germany's pride in themselves. And they're going to see that through the Nazi Party, and they're going to see that in Hitler. And Hitler, because he's got a personality, he's very charismatic, he's going to be able to get a lot of people on his side and start to believe his beliefs about different things, about Germany needing to expand to be safe, that Russia is their main enemy, the Jews are a problem that needs to be solved. And he's also going to be pushing the borders out. He's got an idea of uniting all the German people of the world, but then his plan goes beyond that. The Great Depression is going to have a big effect on all different countries around the world, and it's the way they respond to the Great Depression that's going to set things in motion. One of the biggest things is that if you're in economic doldrums, gaining territory, gaining resources is going to be very attractive to you. Being able to bring more things into your economy is going to be attractive. Isolation and appeasement are going to be two things that are going to combine together that are going to allow the problems that are festering in the 1930s to finally become such a crisis that has to be dealt with. And appeasement, we'll talk about appeasement, but appeasement is where we are able to stop Hitler before it gets too bad, and we don't take the route to do that. So reparations in the Weimar Republic, Germany is going to be losing a lot of territory, but this is Germany after the war. So they have some territory over here in what will become Poland. Some of this territory is going to be given back, but if you take a look at Germany, they're not necessarily united. So there's got to be a German nationalism that comes about. You got the Bavarians and the Swabians, you have all these different ethnicities. They all speak German, but they see themselves as differently. It has to be united into one strong nation for Germany to be able to prosper. And that's not going to happen until the Nazis are going to do that unification. And they've got that economic problems where they have to burn Reichsmarks because it's more valuable, the heat, than actually being able to use them. The Kellogg-Briand Pact. This is seen as silly today, but 15 nations, including the United States, are going to come together and they're going to renounce war as a tool of diplomacy. That we're no longer going to use war to gain anything, gain political ideas. Now, there's also other things going on. Neutrality, the United States is retreated. I call it the Ninja Turtle effect. All right, we're isolated, kind of, before World War I. We're in our shell, come out fighting. Right, and then after World War I, we go back into our shell. Right, and we have to be pulled out of that shell. We have to be convinced to go fighting in World War II. We do, and then we never really go back into the shell after World War II. We try, but we're never able to. But FDR is trying to make us isolated, trying to get us back into that shell, get us protected again. So we're not going to trade war materials, and boats can't enter into those zones. A lot of those reasons that started World War I, the Lusitania, the trade connections to Britain that are going to be problematic. So he's trying, this is kind of right-headed, but it's not necessarily in keeping with the times. If we're going to confront the evil in Hitler, neutrality is definitely not going to be the way to do it. At the same time, there's the Spanish Civil War going on, and the Spanish Civil War is going to be between fascism and communism, and we're not necessarily going to help this out all that much. There's different fighters in here. You got the fascist leader of Francisco Franco, but to fight against fascism, that means we're going to have to join forces with communism, which isn't going to be something that we want to do. There are going to be Americans that head over to the Spanish Civil War, including the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. But they're doing of their own volition. It's not the federal government, it's not the U.S. government sending them to help fight in the Spanish Civil War. But in the end, the loyalists are going to surrender, and Francisco Franco, a fascist, is going to be the leader in Spain. But the only reason why this is important, it's seen as a dress rehearsal for World War II. You've got the forces of democracy and communism kind of teaming up to go against fascism. And if we don't have a strong response, you get fascist Franco on the leader of Spain. So we don't want that to happen to the rest of Europe. Guernica, this is probably the one thing that most Americans know about the Spanish Civil War, is the painting Guernica by Pablo Picasso, showing the bombing of that town during the Spanish Civil War. So the Axis powers, the enemy side, this enemy alliance, is going to be Nazi Germany, led by Adolf Hitler. I think everybody kind of is familiar with that. Fascist Italy. So fascism is this idea, the way Mussolini describes fascism is a rejection of pacifism. So war is good, war unifies the nation, wars define a nationality, and we're going to expand, is essentially his message to the world. And they do, but they only expand into Ethiopia, which was the only independent country in Africa. So he's not going up against major powers here. He's seen as Adolf Hitler's stooge. He's seen as taking orders from Hitler, as being the strong man, but not the strong man. Hitler's had the power, Mussolini's kind of his yes man. And then an empire in Japan, they're not going to be involved in the European theater. You've got Emperor Hirohito, even though that's kind of a ceremonial position. You got the Prime Minister Tojo that's really making decisions in Japan. They're not involved in the European theater, and they're not actually coordinating their plans. There's no great strategy between Hitler and Hirohito teaming up. They're just fighting the same people. And in Germany, in Nazi Germany, thinking of Nazism is essentially fascism, where you're going to have a strong dictator in charge of every facet of the country that is rejecting peace as a means to get what he wants. But with Nazi Germany, you add on to that racial element of anti-Semitism, and that's what makes Nazism different than fascism, just straight fascism. You're also going to have minor Axis powers, and a lot of these countries that end up being Axis powers, the smaller ones, they've got a hard decision. A lot of them are in Eastern Europe, and they basically have to decide, what are they going to be? Are you going to be fascist, or are you going to be communist? Stalin is not a nice guy. So if you want to, it's basically Hitler, Stalin. Hitler, Stalin. That's a pretty bad coin to flip. So they've got some bad decisions to make. And in the end, they're going to do a whole lot of suffering during this war. Allied powers. The Soviet Union is one of the first ones to fight. They're considered an allied power, but at first we distrust him for some of the things he's been doing. At first he's going to make a peace pact with Hitler, and then later they're going to fight, and then we get involved in the war, and then because we're fighting a common enemy, we're going to have an alliance. The other allied powers, you're going to have the United Kingdom, Britain, with their prime minister, probably one of my favorite characters in all history, Winston Churchill. He's just got some awesome speeches. And then you have the U.S. with Franklin Roosevelt. Later in the war, you're going to have Truman. And those are going to be called the Big Three. Again, democracy, capitalism, democracy and capitalism, communism. So we're a strong three, but we don't necessarily trust each other. Right, the Free French Forces. So France is going to be invaded really quickly earlier in the war. The leader of the French Free Forces, these guys that are trying to sabotage the Nazis, is going to be Charles de Gaulle. He's going to be in exile at the time, so he's trying to lead them while he's someplace else. Canada's involved in the war. They're going to be at D-Day. And then KMT China, they're going to be in the Pacific as well. Chiang Kai-shek is leading the Democratic Chinese. Going into war, Hitler is going to start to expand out. Remember what we said about the Holocaust? He's an Austrian, but he's going to get German citizenship. He's going to be declared a German citizen so he can become president of Germany. Once he is the leader and the dictator of Germany, he's going to pull out of the League of Nations. He's going to say that Germany is not abiding by the Treaty of Versailles anymore, so they're going to rearm, build an army, create an air force. At the same time, Italy is going down into Ethiopia, so we have some aggression going on. The Anschluss, yeah, that's a fancy word. Anschluss is going to be the first time where Hitler gets another territory. So he's going to reoccupy the Rhineland, and the Rhineland had been declared kind of a safe zone where the Germans were not allowed to put soldiers. He's going to send soldiers there. He's going to get a pact with Italy, and then he's going to add on Austria. Now this is and he does this bloodless. It's a referendum. It's rigged, and I'll show you kind of how they are definitely leaning you towards saying yes. So the referendum in Austria, most people in Austria have a German heritage, so if you're creating a greater Germany, the first place you're going to look at is Austria. So the big question was, do you want to reunify with the German Empire, and do you want Hitler as your leader? Ja, J-A, ja for yes, or nein for no. You can take a look at that circle compared to that circle. There's no confusion here. They want you to say yes. And so Hitler is going to gain Austria in 1938 without even firing a shot. He didn't have to. Austrians wanted to become part of his Reich. 1938, Germany, Hitler wants the Sudetenland, which is this German-speaking ethnic part of Czechoslovakia, and he's going to try to get it. A lot of people around Europe are kind of seeing the handwritings on the wall, and they want to stop him. But at the Munich conference, Hitler is going to say, I want the Sudetenland, but that's it. I just want to unite the German-speaking peoples of the world. Once I have the Sudetenland, there's no more German-speaking people that I want. So I'm not going to push for anything else. So the Munich Agreement in 1938, let Hitler have the Sudetenland and we'll have peace. The British Prime Minister says we're going to have peace in our time because we've made this great deal that's going to prevent a war. But Hitler isn't really done. FDR is very concerned about what's going on in Europe. He says we cannot let it spread. We want to quarantine these diseases of fascism and communism. But we're not stepping into the fray. One of the reasons why we're not stepping into the fray is it looks like communism and fascism are joining teams. In 1939, they're creating essentially a pact, non-aggression. Neither one would invade Poland because Poland is that borderland of both Soviet and Germany. So if Hitler's going to invade the Soviet Union, he's going to have to go through Poland first. If the Soviet Union's going to invade Germany, they've got to go through Poland first. So both are going to agree to have Poland as a buffer zone. Communists are going to hate this because they don't like fascism and they think that this is a friendship. It's not really a friendship, it's a mutual distrust is why they create this anyway. But once Poland is there, and this is where the next video is going to pick up, Poland is supposed to be separate, and then Hitler invades in 1939. What he's after is Lebensraum, elbow space. He wants to replace the people in Poland with German farmers so that they can supply this industrial Germany with food. To do that, you've got to deal with the people in Poland. But that is the end of the causes we're going to discuss, and then you can get right into the course of the European War.